Something doesn't quite add up in this photo taken through a window of the Apollo lunar module shortly after separation of the command and service modules. For a start, why is the lunar module still attached to the command module? The answer: this photo is part of the ill-fated Apollo 13 mission, the one NASA claims went around the moon without landing after an oxygen tank ruptured, the crew spending almost all the journey in the lunar module, which is why it was still attached as they approached Earth. It's the shadows that don't quite add up, isn't it? If the sun is shining from this angle, what part of the spacecraft could be casting a shadow on the command module? Let's take a look. I've placed the photo in CAD. Creating the moon as a sphere allows the sunlight to be positioned correctly. There we go. Next, the command module is added and aligned with the photo. And finally, the lunar module. Now let's add some sunlight and take another look. Bingo! And as you can see, the shadow cast by the landing radar atop the lunar module in the CAD model falls exactly where it is in the photo from the Apollo 13 mission. Moving back, we can see the photo was captured through the docking window, which is here in the roof of the lunar module. In fact, it's the only window with a view of the command module when the two are docked. In this photo from the same mission, which was captured as the command module separated from the lunar module, you can see the docking window has a scale scribed on both panes of glass. There we go. So let's take another look at the earlier photo that had to be captured through this window. That's strange. Why can't we see any trace of the scale in this photo when everything else appears to be correct? Though not always clear, the scale is always visible, even in photos where the lens is right up against the glass, because the scale occupies almost all of this small window. However, there is not a trace of the scale in any of the 49 photos on magazine 59 that NASA claims were captured through the lunar module docking window during the Apollo 13 mission. I guess someone must have forgotten to put it in. And that's not the only mistake. The Apollo command module is 154 inches in diameter. When the visible edge of the module in the photo is lined up with the module in CAD, the chord between the ends of the arc, which occupies the width of the photo, measures 85 inches. The distance from the lunar module docking window to the outer rim of the command module is around 96 inches. From this we can calculate the FOV of the lens to be around 47.6 degrees. The 70mm film used in the cameras has a usable image width of 54mm, from which we can calculate the focal length of the lens used to take this photo had to be around 61mm. But according to this NASA document, the crew of Apollo 13 used two Hasselblad EL cameras equipped with 80mm and 250mm lenses, which is confirmed in this discussion between Houston and the crew. The document actually states the 250mm lens was used to take the photo, which is impossible. The 250mm lens is a telephoto with a 12.5 degree field of view, so the command module rim would have to be 32 feet away. With a 37.9 degree field of view, the 80mm lens would place the rim at 124 inches away, which is still too far, so the lens used had to be the 60mm, which was included in all Apollo lunar surface missions, including Apollo 13. But there's no mention of a 60mm lens having been used anywhere in the post-flight reports or flight journal transcript. But even if the team preparing the post-flight documentation was mistaken, and the lens used to take these photos was in fact the 60mm, the problem just gets worse. Based on a 47.2 degree field of view for the 60mm lens, the moon in this photo, as well as the other 48 photos taken during the same sequence, occupies 0.8 degrees of arc, From this, it is possible to calculate it was some 155,000 miles away when the photo was taken. But according to the Apollo 13 flight journal, separation took place when the spacecraft was 41,000 road miles from Earth, which means it had to be at least 197,000 miles from the Moon. Now, if the 80mm lens had been used to take the photos, the Moon would occupy 0.64 degrees of arc, which would indeed place it at around 193,000 miles. And just to be clear, if the 250mm telephoto lens really was responsible for these photos, the Moon would have to be 500,000 miles away to appear so small. So we have a photo of the command module taken with a 60mm lens, one of the Moon taken with an 80mm lens, and the view through a docking window with no scale. This photo is a poorly researched composite, and it's not alone. Let's turn our attention to this photo from Apollo 13. This is another view of the command module through the lunar module docking window. And this time someone has remembered that the docking window has a scale, so let's add it in. Great, it all lines up. Until we add the command module, because clearly the angle between it and the lunar module is wrong. Well, not so much wrong as physically impossible. Because aligning features in the photo with the command module proves the photo of the command module had to be taken from a completely different angle. But even the different light levels, directions and contrasts in this photo point to it being a composite. For the area below this line to be in shade, the light had to strike the command module at this angle, and these structures would cast a long shadow on the surface, which they don't, while these two structures appear to be receiving intense light from somewhere completely different, and the Moon, which is after all a sphere, appears completely illuminated with absolutely no shadow on the horizon. Then there's this cable, I believe is actually a wire attached to the docking window heater, that somehow disappears below a command module window before re-emerging to be cut off completely. As always, it begs the question, if these guys really were where NASA claimed they were, why did someone have to go to all this trouble to fake the photos? And why didn't they take any movies through the docking window? Not that it matters, because whoever was in charge of documenting the Apollo 13 myth ignored something even NASA blind faith Apollophile Tom Hanks overlooked. Let's listen in as Capcom Charles Duke in Mission Control preps Commander Jim Lovell aboard Apollo 13.
Under step 2, scratch. Step 3, scratch. Landing gear deploy, scratch. Over.
You see, at around this point in every mission since Apollo 10, the crew would detonate charges to deploy the landing gear that was tucked away for the journey to the Moon. But on this occasion, Houston instructed Lovell to scratch the deployment.
Okay, under tips press, we'll scratch the first line, and we'll have the descent helium rig talk back to Barber Pole. We'll scratch steps 2 and 3, and we'll scratch the landing gear deploy.
Roger.
And there's no mention of it having been deployed at any time anywhere else, which meant it remained tucked away for the entire mission, exactly as depicted in the Apollo 13 flight journal at the point of separation. And yet, as you can see in this sequence of photos from magazine 59 of the Apollo 13 photo library, the landing gear is fully deployed. Just like every other Apollo mission, the crew of Apollo 13 never left the safety of a low Earth orbit. But unlike all the other lunar landings, Apollo 13 had to fail because NASA failed to plant the evidence it needed from the previous mission, the Lunar Descent Module from Apollo 12, when the S-4B missed the Moon. It's sleight of hand on a cosmic scale, and everyone continues to be taken in by NASA's lies. Well, almost everyone.